powered by artificial intelligence.
Welcome to the UGTP Weekly AI Intelligence Desk for May 24 through May 29, 2026. This is the Mega Roundup, the stories that changed the shape of AI this week, with the newest and least weekly framed stories first, then the broader arc. The rule stays the same: primary sources only, every major claim attributed, and no hype without receipts. The big theme is simple: models are becoming products, agents are becoming systems, and infrastructure is becoming the moat. Agent stack from Anthropic, OpenAI, Mistral, and GitHub. Then we step through the rest of the week: AI factories, coding agents, search and RAG, payment rails, local robots, science agents, audio generation, open models, provenance, and model customization. By the end, the week should feel less like a list and more like a system coming into focus. The first story is RuView, because it sits outside the normal model release rhythm and it is exactly the kind of project that makes AI feel physical. The repo describes a Wi-Fi sensing platform that uses channel state information from low-cost ESP32 sensors to detect presence, movement, breathing, heart rate trends, and room activity without cameras or wearables. That is exciting. It also means the system belongs in the privacy and security conversation, not only the smart home conversation. The advantage is clear. Cameras are powerful, but they capture faces, rooms, screens, clothing, and visitors. RuView points at a different sensor trade-off: infer occupancy or safety signals without recording images. The README also emphasizes local edge hardware, no cloud, no cameras, and no internet required. For elder care, bedroom-adjacent monitoring, robotics, industrial safety, and privacy-sensitive rooms, that is the right direction if the sensing works reliably. The project is also honest about gaps. The README says the Hugging Face model ships in SOL RVF format, while the Live Sensing Server model flag expects binary RVF, so pointing the server at the SONA model currently errors and degrades to null output. It also says the separate 17 keypoint pose estimation model is not in this release. ADR 136 goes further, calling part of the recent architecture a skeleton and nervous system, not a shipping product. That nuance matters. On privacy, RuView has a real upside and a real challenge. The upside is that camera-free sensing reduces visual exposure. The project also describes a BFLD privacy layer designed to prevent raw beamforming data from leaving the node, keep identity embeddings in RAM, and reduce cross-site correlation through keyed daily rotation. That is a thoughtful direction. The project is not ignoring privacy, it is trying to design technical boundaries around it. The risk is that invisible sensing is still sensing. The README lists person re-identification as a capability, saying each person can create a personal Wi-Fi signature. ADR 140 also says semantic states need stronger provenance, confidence, expiry, and privacy action fields. So yes, no camera is better than a camera in many contexts. But occupancy, sleep, possible distress, bathroom use, vitals, and identity-like signatures are still sensitive behavioral data. The security story is constructive but not casual. The changelog shows serious remediation. OTA uploads now fail closed when no pre-shared key is provisioned, path traversal vulnerabilities were patched, credential exposure was cleaned up, and WebSocket handling was hardened. That is good. The same changelog also tells operators the attack surface is real. Any deployment should stay local, use authentication, lock down MQTT, segment IoT devices, and treat the system as a sensitive sensor network. Now to the latest enterprise agent wave. Anthropic launched Claude Opus 4.8, and the positioning is very direct: a hybrid reasoning model for coding, agents, and professional work with a 1 million token context window. Anthropic says it is available across cloud plans, the Cloud Platform, AWS, Google Cloud, and Microsoft Foundry. The interesting part is not only bigger context, it is the claim that frontier models are being packaged for sustained professional workflows. Anthropic is presenting Opus 4.8 as a premium workhorse. The model page highlights professional software engineering, complex agentic workflows, and high-stakes enterprise tasks. That tells you where the market is moving. The frontier race is no longer just who answers benchmark questions. It is who can keep context, plan across tools, write and revise code, use enterprise data, and stay reliable enough for paid work. The second Anthropic story is capital. Anthropic says it raised $65 billion in Series H funding at a $965 billion post-money valuation, led by Altimeter, Dragoner, Greenoaks, and Sequoia. The company says revenue momentum and enterprise adoption are part of the story, and that the funding will support safety, interpretability, compute expansion, products, and partnerships. That is a giant signal about where investor expectations are going. The significance is not just the number. Frontier AI now needs three things at once: research talent, durable compute, and enterprise distribution. Anthropic's announcement ties those together. The company is not only raising money to train a model, it is raising money to keep Claude available, reliable, integrated, and trusted across business workflows. In the agent era, safety and interpretability also become part of the commercial product surface. OpenAI's big late-week move was governance. The company published its Frontier Governance Framework, saying it explains how safety and security practices align with emerging legal requirements. OpenAI specifically references California's Transparency in Frontier AI Act and the European Union AI Act Code of Practice for General-Purpose AI. The framework covers risk areas including cyberoffense, CBRN risks, harmful manipulation, loss of control, model reporting, security risk management, and incident response. That sounds dry until you connect it to the rest of the week. If agents are going to operate inside tax workflows, software repositories, payment flows, search systems, elections, and industrial engineering, governance cannot be a PDF in the corner. It becomes infrastructure. Enterprise buyers will ask how models are evaluated, monitored, updated, and restricted. Developers will ask how governance affects what agents can do. Regulators will ask who is accountable when systems act. Mistral's AI Now Summit turned the week from model news into full-stack strategy. Mistral announced Mistral for Industrial Engineering, an integrated stack combining physics models, engineering expertise, and robotics for mission-critical industrial operations. It says it is working with Airbus, BMW Group, and ASML. It also announced a 10-megawatt Les Ulis site dedicated to inference operations, scheduled for the third quarter of 2026. The interesting move is that Mistral is not only competing model to model. It is positioning around industrial workflows where data, intellectual property, latency, safety, and control matter. Aerospace, automotive engineering, and semiconductor manufacturing are not casual chatbot domains. They are places where AI has to understand constraints, simulations, procedures, and proprietary systems. That is where full-stack, sovereign, or on-prem AI narratives become much more concrete. Mistral also reframed Luchat as Vibe, one agent and one license across work and code. According to Mistral, Vibe can catch up across inbox and calendar, run deep research, draft deliverables, and orchestrate recurring processes. Work mode is for longer-range tasks, while code mode launches remote coding agents from the web. Mistral also announced a Vibe extension for VS Code and updates to Vibe CLI. The strategic point is that assistants are collapsing into cross-surface agents. The same branded system is expected to live in the web app, the editor, the terminal, the inbox, and recurring business processes. That is the new product shape. The chat box is not disappearing, but it is becoming the launch surface for work that happens somewhere else. Mistral's Search Toolkit might be the most practical enterprise release of the week. Mistral describes it as a composable framework for building production search pipelines for AI applications. It unifies ingestion, retrieval, and evaluation under a shared interface. Mistral says it supports BM25 sparse retrieval, dense embedding retrieval, hybrid configurations, and evaluation metrics like recall, precision, mean reciprocal rank, and NDCG. This matters because agents are only as good as their context. Enterprise agents need to search private documents, codebases, CRMs, tickets, policies, and live systems. If retrieval is weak, every downstream answer gets weaker. The most useful part of Search Toolkit may be evaluation, because serious RAG work needs repeatable quality checks. In 2026, search is not a side feature, it is agent infrastructure. GitHub added Claude Opus 4.8 to Copilot. The GitHub changelog says it is available to Copilot Pro Plus, Business, and Enterprise users across VS Code, Visual Studio, Copilot CLI, the Cloud Agent, GitHub.com, Mobile, JetBrains, Xcode, and Eclipse. It also launches with a 15 times premium request multiplier until usage-based billing arrives on June 1st. That is a clear example of frontier models turning into priced product tiers. Midweek, NVIDIA framed the infrastructure story with AI factories. NVIDIA says these systems manufacture intelligence in real time, and that economics are measured by tokens per second, tokens per watt, cost per token, utilization, and uptime. That framing is important because agents are not one-off completions. They plan, search, retrieve, write code, call tools, reason, and act repeatedly. The workload starts to look like a factory process. AI factory economics are not only about GPUs. NVIDIA's post talks about optimization across models, compute, networking, memory, software, storage, power, and cooling. That whole stack matters because agentic workloads are messy. Long context reasoning stresses memory. Retrieval stresses storage and networking. Tool use stresses orchestration. High utilization stresses scheduling. The company that controls the whole factory can squeeze cost and latency in ways a single model release cannot. NVIDIA also said first Vera CPU systems were delivered to Anthropic, OpenAI, xAI, and Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. NVIDIA describes Vera as the host processor for Vera Rubin NVL72 and is useful for orchestration, tool calling, reinforcement learning workloads, data analytics, agent sandboxing, and long context state management. Translation: the CPU side of the AI factory is becoming more visible because agents need coordination, not only matrix multiplication. NVIDIA's companion Vera post says the CPU has 88 custom Olympus cores and 1.2 terabytes per second of memory bandwidth. It cites Phoronix testing where Vera sustained 90% of peak memory bandwidth and showed a 1.6 times geometric mean increase versus Grace. Those are NVIDIA-attributed claims, but the direction is clear: agent factories need host CPUs that can keep up with data movement and orchestration. OpenAI's tax agent story showed what enterprise agents look like when they are connected to a narrow business workflow. OpenAI and Thrive Holdings described tax AI for Crete accountants, with a pilot that processed 7,000 tax returns across participating firms. The post says practitioner corrections and product traces become eval targets for Codex. That is the key pattern: agents improve through workflow feedback, not only through generic chat logs. The specific performance claims should stay attributed to OpenAI's post, but the workflow pattern is the larger story. The agent is not replacing an entire profession in one sweep. It is entering a structured process, drafting work, receiving corrections, and turning those corrections into future tests. That is exactly how enterprise AI will likely spread: narrow domains, measurable tasks, human review, and increasingly automated improvement loops. OpenAI also published a warp story around open-source software development with GPT 5.5. The post frames agentic development as a loop where agents plan, edit, test, and help with software work. Whether the product is Codex, Copilot, Vibe, Warp, or another agent, the workflow is converging. The model does not just answer coding questions. It works inside the repository, produces changes, and responds to tests. Google's search update was about the web itself. Google says it is updating AI mode and AI overviews to help people find relevant websites, deep insights, and original content. It also says AI responses will show suggestions for where to go next and links to unique articles or in-depth analyses, plus features that highlight links from users' news subscriptions. That is Google trying to answer a major criticism: AI search must send people somewhere useful. The tension is obvious. Users like direct answers, but publishers, creators, and businesses need discovery and traffic. If AI mode becomes the starting point for the web, the design of citations, links, subscriptions, and next-click suggestions becomes economically important. This is not only a search UX change. It is an argument over how AI-mediated browsing redistributes attention. Google Pay's developer update brought payments into the agent story. Google says developers can power agentic commerce experiences using Google Pay infrastructure and existing payment service provider relationships. It also announced a Google Pay and Wallet Developer MCP server. That matters because agents eventually need to do more than recommend products. They need a safe, confirmable path to transact. Agentic commerce is useful, but the trust boundary is delicate. If an agent can search, compare, fill a cart, apply a discount, choose shipping, and pay, then confirmation and fraud controls become core UX. The payment rail has to know when a person approved the action and when an agent is only preparing it. This is why MCP, identity, audit logs, and consent patterns matter so much. Hugging Face's Reachy Mini post was a nice counterweight to the cloud infrastructure stories. Hugging Face says Reachy Mini can run its conversation stack fully locally, using a cascaded pipeline for voice activity detection, speech-to-text, a local language model, and text-to-speech, exposed through a real-time API-compatible WebSocket. The point is simple and powerful: robots can have useful conversations without sending everything to the cloud. Local robot conversation matters for 3 reasons. First, privacy. A home robot hears sensitive things. Second, latency. Conversation feels better when round trips are short. Third, resilience. Robots should not become silent when the network fails or an API key expires. This is part of a larger week-long theme. Some AI is becoming massive cloud infrastructure, while other AI is moving closer to the edge. Hugging Face also published a technical post on delta weight sync in TRL. The post says a pull request encodes only changed weight elements as a sparse safetensors file, uploads the sparse update to a Hugging Face bucket, and lets VLLM fetch it. Hugging Face says the per-step payload on Qwen 3.0.6b drops from 1.2 GB to around 20 to 35 MB. That sounds niche, but it points at a bigger infrastructure problem. Reinforcement learning, evaluation, serving, and environment simulation increasingly run on separate machines. Moving full model weights every step is wasteful. Sparse deltas make distributed training and serving loops more practical. This is another example of the week's hidden theme: the breakthroughs are not only models. They are the plumbing that makes model iteration cheaper and faster. OpenAI's election safeguards post was one of the week's trust stories. OpenAI says its 2026 election focus includes reliable information, cyber defense support, transparency, misuse prevention, and political bias monitoring. It says it will partner with the Associated Press for live vote counts in the United States and Brazil, and with Democracy Works in the United States for voting and registration logistics. OpenAI also says it will not allow political ads this cycle. The significance is that election information is no longer just a content policy problem. It intersects with provenance, image watermarking, search, live data partnerships, and cyber defense. OpenAI's election post pairs naturally with its provenance work and governance framework. If AI systems are going to answer civic questions at scale, users need fresh, authoritative data and visible boundaries around persuasion, impersonation, and manipulation. Google DeepMind's co-scientist story moved the week into research. DeepMind describes co-scientist as a multi-agent AI system built with Gemini for generating, debating, and evolving scientific hypotheses. The post says it integrates web search and specialized databases such as CHEMBL and UniProt, and that Google is making this system available through hypothesis generation, also described as Gemini for Science. The pattern is important. A science agent should not only produce one answer. It should generate hypotheses, critique them, revise them, compare evidence, and connect to domain databases. That is a different workflow from a chatbot. It is closer to a research loop. The hard question is not whether the system can sound scientific, it is whether it can produce useful, testable directions while staying grounded in evidence. Stability AI launched Stable Audio 3.0, described as a model family built with open-weight models and trained on fully licensed data. Stability says the family includes small SFX, small, and medium as open-weight models, while large is available through the Stability API. It also says medium and large can generate more than 6 minutes of audio, with LoRa documentation and audio and painting options. Audio generation is becoming more useful because it is stretching beyond short novelty clips. Longer generation, in painting, and fine-tuning support make audio models more relevant for creators, games, ads, podcasts, prototypes, and sound design. The licensing claim also matters. Creative AI is under constant pressure around training data, rights, and commercial usability. Open-weight audio with licensed data positioning is a meaningful product signal. Cohere acquired Reliant AI, a biopharma AI company with operations in Montreal and Berlin. Cohere says Reliant brings a research team, proprietary biomedical datasets, and domain-optimized technology. It also says the acquisition will accelerate North for Pharma, an agentic AI system for biopharma workflows that can automate literature reviews, competitive landscaping, and extraction of scientific and regulatory data. That story connects with co-scientist. AI companies are moving deeper into vertical domains where generic chat is not enough. Biopharma needs literature, regulatory data, terminology, safety, auditability, and proprietary datasets. Scientific discovery needs databases and evidence loops. The winners will not only have big models. They will have domain workflow, domain data, and enough trust to operate in regulated settings. Google said Gemini in Chrome with Autobrowse is coming to Android. The post says Autobrowse can handle tedious tasks such as booking parking or updating orders, while asking confirmation for sensitive actions. Google says the features begin rolling out to select Android phones at the end of June. This is the everyday agent story, not a futuristic office system, but a browser that can help complete tedious tasks. The confirmation detail matters. The moment an agent can browse, fill forms, update orders, or book something, it crosses from information into action. Google Chrome on Android and Google Pay's agentic commerce work are two sides of the same product challenge: give users automation without losing control. The action boundary will define whether everyday agents feel helpful or risky. Earlier in the week, Mistral launched Mistral 3. Mistral says the family includes Mistral Large 3 and Mistral 3 models. It describes Large 3 as a sparse mixture of experts model with 41 billion active and 675 billion total parameters, and says the models are Apache 2.0. The official Hugging Face model card also lists the Large 3 Instruct model under Apache 2.0. Mistral also says Mistral 3 comes in 3, 8, and 14 billion parameter sizes, with base, instruct, and reasoning variants. That matters because not every use case needs a huge frontier model. Smaller models can run closer to data, reduce cost, improve latency, and fit privacy-sensitive deployments. The week had a massive compute story, but it also had a strong local and open model story. Mistral 3 is not isolated from Mistral's enterprise stack. It connects to Forge, Vibe, Search Toolkit, and the AI Now Summit. Mistral is trying to tell one story: open or portable models, enterprise customization, agentic productivity, search infrastructure, and deployment control. Whether you buy the whole stack or only use the models, the strategic shape is clear. Forge is the customization layer. Mistral describes it as a way for enterprises to build frontier-grade AI models grounded in proprietary knowledge. It supports pre-training, post-training, and reinforcement learning workflows, including dense and mixture of experts architectures. Mistral also says Forge is agent-first by design, with autonomous agents such as Vibe able to help with fine-tuning, hyperparameter search, scheduling, and synthetic data generation. Forge matters because many enterprises do not want a generic model bolted onto proprietary data. They want models that understand their domain, their documents, and their constraints, while keeping control over deployment. If Forge works as described, it turns model customization into a managed workflow. It also shows where agentic systems are going. Agents will not only use models, agents will help build and improve models. Cohere launched Command A+, described as an open-source sparse mixture of experts model under Apache 2.0. Cohere lists 218 billion total parameters, 25 billion active parameters, 128,000 input context, and 64,000 maximum generation. It also positions the model for text, image, tool use, reasoning, RAG, multilingual work, and multimodal document processing. Command A+ is important because it targets enterprise workflows rather than only chat benchmarks. Cohere emphasizes RAG, tool use, multilingual support, and multimodal document processing. That makes it part of the same weekly pattern as Mistral 3, open or open source enterprise models designed to run in serious workflows, not just consumer conversations. The open model race this week was not small. Mistral Large 3 and Cohere Command A+ both leaned into sparse mixture of experts architecture, enterprise workflows, and permissive licensing claims. The strategic question is whether open-weight and open-source models can give enterprises enough capability, customization, and control to compete with closed frontier systems. This week, the answer looked more competitive than it did a month ago. OpenAI's provenance post focused on making AI-generated media more transparent. OpenAI says it is strengthening content provenance with C2PA conformance, Google SynthID watermarking for images, and a preview of public verification tooling. It also says provenance needs multiple layers because metadata can be stripped or transformed. That is an important admission. No single watermark or metadata scheme solves authenticity by itself. Provenance connects directly to elections and governance. As image, video, and audio models improve, people need ways to inspect origin and alteration. But provenance only works when platforms preserve signals, tools can verify them, and users understand what the signal means. OpenAI's post is part of a broader movement toward layered trust, metadata, watermarking, policies, verification tools, and education. Anthropic acquired Stainless, a company focused on SDKs and MCP server tooling. Anthropic says Stainless has powered every official Anthropic SDK since the early days of the API, and frames the acquisition around agents connecting to data and tools. That makes perfect sense in this week's context. Agents are only as useful as the systems they can reach, and connectors are becoming part of the model platform. The connector story is everywhere. Anthropic buys Stainless for SDK and MCP tooling. Google Pay announces a developer MCP server. Mistral talks about connectors and live data in its search story. Agents need safe ways to call APIs, retrieve data, start workflows, and prove what they did. That means schemas, SDKs, MCP servers, authentication, permissions, and audit logs are no longer boring plumbing. They are strategy. Google DeepMind's AI pointer post is a smaller story, but it fits the interface theme. Google describes experimental Gemini-powered pointer demos where people can point and speak instead of writing complex prompts. The idea is that AI interaction becomes more spatial, contextual, and embedded in the interface. That pairs with Android Auto Browse, Google Book Magic Pointer, and the broader shift away from prompt boxes as the only interface. The interface direction this week is clear: less manual prompting, more context. Users point, browse, approve, click, edit, and ask in place. AI is moving into the cursor, browser, phone, editor, payment rail, search page, and smart home stack. The next wave of AI products may feel less like opening a chatbot and more like every surface quietly gaining agency. One detail worth slowing down on is pricing. GitHub's 15 times premium request multiplier for Opus 4.8 in Copilot is not just a billing footnote. It tells developers that premium agentic capability has a real marginal cost. The future of AI coding may look less like one unlimited assistant and more like a tiered toolbox: cheap models for quick edits, stronger models for planning, and premium reasoning models for high-value tasks. The 1 million token context window claim on Opus 4.8 also deserves context. Big context is valuable for long code bases, legal documents, research corpora, and multi-step work, but it does not eliminate retrieval. Large context helps the model see more at once. Retrieval helps decide what should be seen in the first place. The best agent systems will likely combine both, large windows for coherence, and search systems for precision. This week also sharpened the open versus closed decision. Closed frontier models like Claude Opus 4.8 compete on capability, product integration, and reliability. Open or open source models like Mistral 3 and Command A+ compete on control, deployment flexibility, customization, and licensing. Enterprises will not choose only by benchmark rank. They will choose by risk, data location, cost, auditability, latency, and the ability to adapt the model to their work. Both Mistral Large 3 and Cohere Command A+ lean into sparse mixture of experts architecture. The appeal is straightforward. The model can have a very large total parameter count while activating a smaller subset per token. That can improve the capability to cost trade-off if the routing, serving, and training are done well. For viewers, the practical question is not only how big the model is, but how much of it runs for each answer. Evaluation kept showing up this week. Mistral Search Toolkit includes retrieval metrics. OpenAI's Tax AI post turns practitioner corrections into eval targets. The pattern is that serious AI products need measurement built into the workflow. You cannot improve a search agent if you do not know which documents it should have found. You cannot improve a tax agent if corrections vanish into support tickets. Evaluation is moving upstream into product design. RAG used to mean a quick embedding demo over a PDF folder. This week makes it look more professional. Search Toolkit talks about ingestion, retrieval, and evaluation. Google Search is rethinking how AI points users back to source material. Hugging Face is improving the infrastructure around training and serving loops. The mature version of RAG is not one vector database. It is a full evidence system with freshness, ranking, permissions, metrics, and monitoring. MCP kept appearing in different places: Anthropic Stainless acquisition, Google Pay's developer MCP server, and RuView's MCP style bridge. That does not mean every implementation is identical, but it shows the ecosystem moving towards standard ways for agents to discover and call tools. The next bottleneck will be permissions. It is one thing to let an agent read data. It is another to let it send money, change production code, or trigger an emergency alert. There is a counter-trend to the giant AI factory story: local AI. Reachy Mini's local conversation stack and RuView's edge sensing direction both show why local still matters. Some environments cannot send everything to the cloud, either because of privacy, latency, resilience, or cost. The winning architecture may be hybrid: local models and sensors handle immediate sensitive work, while cloud systems handle heavier reasoning when the user explicitly allows it. RuView also hints at a bigger category: ambient AI. Instead of asking a model a question, the environment itself becomes interpretable. Wi-Fi signals, cameras, microphones, wearables, browsers, payments, and smart home devices all become inputs. That can make technology feel magical, but it also makes consent harder. When sensors fade into the background, product teams need stronger defaults, clearer notices, and better controls. Smart home AI is especially tricky because the home is both the most useful and most sensitive environment. RuView's privacy mode can suppress biometrics, but semantic states can still be sensitive. A Boolean that says bathroom occupied or possible distress may be less invasive than raw video, but it still reveals something personal. Good smart home AI needs local processing, careful sharing, and plain language controls that normal people can understand. For consumer agents, safety will often look like user experience. Does the agent show what it is about to do? Does it ask before sensitive actions? Can you undo? Can you see which account, card, address, or service it used? Google's Chrome Android post mentions confirmation for sensitive actions, and the Google Pay story implies the same need around commerce. Agent safety is not only a policy team problem. It is product design. The science agent stories are exciting, but they require humility. A hypothesis generated by an AI system is not the same as a validated discovery. The useful role is to propose directions, connect evidence, challenge assumptions, and help researchers explore faster. The dangerous version is treating confident text as proof. Co-scientist is interesting because the described workflow includes generation, debate, and evolution, not just one polished answer. Stable Audio 3 also reminds us that creative AI is as much about licensing as capability. A model that makes good sound is useful. A model that creators and companies feel comfortable using commercially is much more useful. Stability's claim that Stable Audio 3 was trained on fully licensed data is part of the product value. In music, sound design, and media production, rights clarity can be as important as model quality. Tax and biopharma are very different domains, but the agent pattern is similar. The model has to understand a narrow workflow, work with domain documents, surface evidence, handle exceptions, and let humans review. That is why vertical AI companies and acquisitions matter. A generic assistant can be impressive. A domain agent has to survive the boring, high-stakes details of real work. Mistral's less ULIS inference site and NVIDIA's AI factory framing also raise a geography point. AI infrastructure is physical. It uses power, land, cooling, chips, networks, and local permitting. For governments and enterprises, where compute runs can matter for sovereignty, latency, security, and resilience. AI strategy is becoming data center strategy, not only model strategy. Anthropic's funding number is huge, but big funding also creates big expectations. Investors are betting that enterprise AI adoption, consumer usage, and developer workflows can turn frontier models into durable revenue. The capital intensity is enormous because compute is enormous. That means the business question for AI companies is not just can the model be smarter. It is can the model be served profitably at global scale. Developer distribution is another battleground. GitHub has Copilot across editors, CLI, cloud agents, mobile, and GitHub.com. OpenAI's Warp story points at agentic development in the terminal and open source workflows. Mistral Vibe spans web, editor, and terminal. The model provider that wins developer habits gets more than usage. It gets feedback, workflow lock-in, and a direct path into software production. This channel's source discipline matters for the same reason provenance matters. The AI news cycle is full of screenshots, rumors, benchmark snippets, and viral posts. But when companies ship models, payment tools, election safeguards, or health-adjacent sensors, the details matter. Primary sources keep the story anchored. If a claim is from a company, we say it is from the company. If a gap is documented by the repo itself, we show that too. This week also reminds us to ask what counts as a product. A model card, demo, preview, ADR, research post, and generally available enterprise feature are not the same thing. RuView's own docs distinguish building blocks from shipping integration. Anthropic's Opus page describes availability across products and platforms. Search Toolkit is a public preview. Good analysis has to separate capability, availability, and production readiness. The most valuable layer may be the boring layer: SDKs, connectors, search pipelines, auth, billing, evals, monitoring, and deployment controls. Shiny model launches get attention, but production agents fail when the boring layer is weak. That is why Stainless, Search Toolkit, Google Pay MCP, AI Factories, and eval loops all belong in the same weekly video. They are the rails under the intelligence. A simple test for every agentic product is this: can the user inspect what happened, refuse what is about to happen, and recover if something goes wrong? That test applies to election answers, browser agents, payment agents, coding agents, smart home alerts, and enterprise workflows. The more autonomous the system becomes, the more visible its control surfaces need to be. If we compress the whole week into one stack, it looks like this: foundation models at the bottom, retrieval and context above them, tools and connectors above that, then workflow interfaces, then governance and user controls across the whole system. Every story this week fits somewhere in that stack. The companies are not only racing to own intelligence, they are racing to own the layers around intelligence. So what did the week add up to? Pattern 1: models are becoming systems. Opus 4.8, Mistral 3, Command A+, and Stable Audio 3 are model stories, but none of them live alone. They connect to coding agents, search pipelines, smart home integrations, audio workflows, science agents, and enterprise customization. The competitive unit is no longer only the model. It is the model plus the system around it. Pattern 2: infrastructure is the moat. Anthropic's funding, NVIDIA's AI factories, Vera CPUs, Mistral's inference site, and distributed training improvements all point in the same direction. Agents are expensive because they do many steps. They need memory, retrieval, planning, tool calls, execution, and verification. Whoever can deliver those steps cheaply, reliably, and at scale gains a real advantage. Pattern 3: search and retrieval are becoming first-class infrastructure. Google is redesigning AI search discovery. Mistral is shipping Search Toolkit. Hugging Face is reducing the cost of training serving synchronization. Agents need private context, fresh state, and evaluation loops. The better your retrieval and evidence system, the better your agent can act without hallucinating its way through work. Pattern 4: trust is becoming a product layer. OpenAI provenance, election safeguards, and the frontier governance framework all landed in the same week as agentic work and AI search. That is not a coincidence. The more AI systems act, transact, write code, answer civic questions, and influence workflows, the more visible the trust layer has to become. Pattern 5: AI is leaving the chat box. Stable Audio moves into creative production. Co-Scientist moves into scientific hypothesis generation. Cohere and Reliant push into biopharma. Reachy Mini runs local robot conversation. RuView turns Wi-Fi into ambient sensing. The same underlying AI wave is spreading into media, science, hardware, health-adjacent workflows, and physical environments. What should we watch next? First, GitHub's usage-based billing launch on June 1st will show how expensive premium frontier coding models feel in daily development. Second, Mistral Search Toolkit adoption will show whether enterprises want a unified open search stack. Third, RuView's model format and integration gaps will show whether ambitious ambient sensing can move from fascinating repo to usable deployment. The weekly verdict is this: there was no single winner because the competition is no longer single lane. Anthropic pushed frontier professional agents. Mistral pushed open models and full-stack enterprise tooling. OpenAI pushed governance, tax agents, provenance, and workflow stories. Google pushed search, Android agents, science, and payments. NVIDIA pushed the factory underneath it all. The week belongs to the stack. If you only remember one sentence, make it this: models are products, agents are systems, and infrastructure is destiny. This week showed all three at once. The companies that win will not merely have a smarter model. They will have better context, better tools, better governance, better distribution, better cost curves, and better ways to turn human feedback into compounding improvement. That is the shape of AI right now.